the demand for this thing was off the charts. We had to cut a bunch of people back. And we just recognized that like institutional investors around the world want to have access to Solana.
For breaking news, Solana's TVL, meaning total value locked, hits a new all-time high of $14.42 billion. TVL represents the health and the building on that specific blockchain. And we can see the TVL is higher than what it was when Solana hit its all-time high at the beginning of 2025, and much higher than it was at the old all-time high back in 2021. So even though the Solana price is 23% down from its all-time high back over 8 months ago, the health, the strength, the fundamentals of the network are much better, signaling price may be about to follow. And just in a NASDAQ-listed manufacturing company with the ticker Ford, so the company is actually called Forward Industries, ticker Ford, not the car company, raises $1.65 billion to invest in Solana in their new Solana treasury. The founder of Multicoin Capital, longtime Solana supporter, Kyle Samani, and new face of the company, so he's now chairman of Forward Industries, explains.
Today we announced the closing of a $1.65 billion pipe. And a few cool notes to add about that. First is, in addition to Multicoin's investment, I actually invested $25 million personally into the vehicle as well, showing really my excitement and dedication and commitment to the opportunity. Second is, we got this money raised in 2 weeks. The demand for this thing was off the charts. We had to cut a bunch of people back. And we just recognized that like institutional investors around the world want to have access to Solana. They want to have access to a company and a management team that knows the Solana ecosystem and industry, and that can ultimately do interesting things in that position, in that role. And so we're very, very fortunate and excited to be here. The company is super excited as well. It's a NASDAQ-listed company, and the ticker is Ford, F-O-R-D.
Solana just keeps quietly pushing higher without anyone paying attention. One last hurdle to overcome is at $250. Clear the black line, and the skies is the limit. Billionaire investor Michael Novogratz says billions are coming into crypto, specifically Solana. Because as the United States tokenizes, not just the US, as global markets like the New York Stock Exchange, like traditional markets, stock exchanges all over the world as they tokenize, he says they're coming to Solana for one of few specific reasons.
Money that might have been either otherwise pushing the price of Bitcoin higher, I don't, you tell me, is it coming out of Bitcoin into stable coins and other coins, or is it just not moving into Bitcoin at the same pace because there are these other options? And if all of that is true, therefore, how do you think about the ultimate market?
Well, listen, I think crypto market is $4.5 trillion, right? Global wealth market is $400 trillion. And so we got a long way to go, right? We're just getting started. You know, think about this company Ford that we just, Ford Industries, you know, a ticker Ford that we're launching, right? That's $1.65 billion that came in. That's new money, dollars into the crypto space, right? This is a Solana. You know, why Solana at this moment? Total transactions per second Solana can do in a day is 14 billion. That's more than total transactions on equities, fixed income, commodities, and foreign exchange, right? And so you've got a blockchain that's now fast enough, tailor-made to be the blockchain for financial markets. And you got an SEC chair saying, I want you to build on chain. And so those two things are lining up. I'm calling this the season of Sol. But right behind us, you've got Dan Moorhead, who's coming with a Sol fund, a Sol treasury company, and then you've got two ETFs coming right after that. And so that money pouring into Solana ecosystem right now because people see that as a potential winner in the financial market space, the blockchain. You know,
but if Solana wins, this is the thing that I'm trying to figure out, and this is maybe why I was asking the question. And maybe you could say they all have different purposes, but at some level, maybe they don't. So if you think about Solana, if Solana wins, does Ethereum not? if Ethereum wins, does Solana not? Do you put Bitcoin in a completely different category? And then meantime, you have all these different trust companies and others that are levering themselves up in certain ways. Sometimes they're these sort of levered ETFs. And how we should think about that, which is at some level a speculation on top of all of this.
Yeah. Listen, so I think Bitcoin as a store of value stands by itself. It's digital gold. It's going to be digital gold. It's got a community of people that trust it. Think about what blockchains are, or cryptos are. They're communities of people that decided to trust their hard-earned wealth in this technology, in this community, because they don't trust, because we have a breakdown in trust in the government, in between political parties, between countries, right? Trust is in a bear market and an accelerating one. And so I think Bitcoin is going nowhere but up over time. Ethereum has its own community and its own narrative and its own use case. Yes, it will compete against Solana and other blockchains, but it's not like we're going to have one blockchain to rule them all. And so this is healthy competition to kind of rebuild the financial architecture that the whole world runs.
And that's true. I mean, the leading United States exchange, NASDAQ, just filed with the SEC to tokenize everything.
Do you want to tell people what?
You think we should?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so this morning we announced that we're going to be bringing tokenization into our markets. So making sure that equities are tokenized and traded on market, in the markets, not in a side sleeve, but actually in the core markets.
So the eventual goal, or is it today? 24/7, 365 equities, just let it rip constantly.
I mean, I think we are all moving in that direction. We announced several months ago that we're moving to 24/5, so we're kind of moving that way.
So Saturday and Sunday,
not for equities yet. I think that we have to. We're walking before we run, but I think that getting to 24/5 is a major advancement for the U.S. equities markets. And then on top of that, now with tokenization, if we can introduce that also into the markets, it allows us to really think about streamlining the post-trade processing, bringing and modernizing elements of the markets that have a lot of friction. We are hyper resilient and we're hyper scaled. We manage, like today, we had 95 billion messages come into our systems today, and we had a median, return time of 20 microseconds from order to trade. We handle like 3 million messages a second. It's hugely scaled. But then at the same time, once that trade occurs, there's a different process. And then the post-trade process, as we know, is an area where tokenization really shines. And really cutting down the friction, managing capital flows across the global ecosystem, and really bringing that capability into the markets is going to be the next.
I'm curious to get your reaction to this. There's this very famous curve, which is like you get this early font of insanity, and then there's the trough of disillusionment, and then you grow through. And does it seem like crypto is actually in blockchain? It's finally real. It's like there's real companies doing real things, stable coins, what Sachs did with the Genius Act.
Well, I actually want to point to that because, honestly, having regulators who want to work on bringing it into the mainstream and want to create the rules of the road is such a refreshing thing, because I think that it allows us all to understand how we can operate within a world where there are tenets of investor protection. The technology is going to have things we can and can't do, but also being forward-thinking and forward-leaning and how the technology is going to be applied is going to be critical. So we're very excited about the fact that we finally have this convergence of regulation between the traditional markets, the digital markets. How do we bring it all together to, frankly, advance all markets? And we're very, very excited about that.
Is this going to happen on Ethereum, where you would need an Ethereum layer 2 for the scalability? Ethereum is too slow just on the base chain without adding some layer 2s like MUS, like Cody, or maybe this happens, and globally maybe this happens on Solana, which can handle much, much more.
I picked Solana 8 years ago. Multicoin as a firm is very famous for having invested in the Solana seed round all the way back in early 2018. We have continually increased our investment in Solana over that time. I've written about Solana on our website extensively, and we made the investment all the way back, dating 7 or 8 years ago, because we understood the vision for internet capital markets to trade every asset in the world on one global unified ledger, and we saw the opportunity for Solana's technology strategy to be the one that would get there. And the Solana blockchain today is 5.5 years old, and it has now proven that it is the most performant blockchain in the world that can handle settling global securities markets. For some context on that, the Solana blockchain can process 14 billion transactions per day, and that's enough to settle all global securities markets, not just NYSE, not just NASDAQ. You could take LSE, you could take Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, every securities market around the world, and you could settle them on Solana at its current capacity today.
And let's pay attention to the altcoins, which fundamentals are getting better. Clear progress. The Pro, that's the token of Propy Pro. The Pro guts MiCA. White paper is live, aligned with MiCA, the EU's landmark for digital assets and a benchmark for global trust, meaning Propy has achieved MiCA compliance. That's a huge part of the world and also demand a pocket of demand that has just opened up for Propy. MiCA is the most comprehensive framework for digital assets worldwide. For Pro, it means clarity, durability, and trust needed to scale for adoption. Obviously, real-world assets, real estate being one of the realest real-world assets. That's a trend in crypto. Propy is obviously US licensed, so compliant for the rules that we have now for real estate, compliant in the United States. And few tokens in the world are aligned with MiCA today. Now, Pro is one of them, placing real estate on a regulated path forward. I will keep you updated. Now, also the SEC, specifically Hester Pierce, SEC's Pierce warns that Ethereum L2 chains with centralized sequencers may face exchange registration. Meaning, if you're not decentralized, that may cause a problem for you. METIS sort of becoming future-proof as they have led the introduction for decentralized sequencers. Something to note. Some people have been asking why Avalanche AVAX is starting to see a tick-up. Well, we have one of their main dexes, Black Hole, doing numbers. The Epoch 8 stats. I'll explain that in a second, but the current stats are over $1 billion in trading volume, over 135 million plus in TVL. And again, this is one of the main DEX for Avalanche, which are still giving great APRs. Basic pools on Black Hole are still seeing solid APRS into our 9th epoch. So you can get 900% if you do maybe some of the more speculative AVAX coins, or if you do some standards like wrapped AVAX or Bitcoin on AVAX, they have 400 to 500% APR. Do not count out the AVAX ecosystem. And as we end the show, I do just want to pay a bit of respect to Bitcoiner Charlie Kirk. I still love listening to his debates, and obviously you saw the news that happened, so, you know, there are bigger things out there than crypto. But just in a moment of remembrance, I want to leave you with this. Literally, the wealthiest families on the planet are starting to park serious money into Bitcoin. Rest in peace.
The reason why I think we should have a strategic Bitcoin reserve, I know you guys had Michael Saylor on your show, and I think he's onto something. There is something called like the mass adoption theory, which is over a period of time, like the English language, US dollar, things just catch on and they're just kind of volitional and there's no stopping it. I think Bitcoin is that. You got to watch out though. Quantum computing could potentially crack cryptography.
But if they do that, then they're also cracking bank accounts.
Right.
And stock trading accounts.
So quantum is the only asterisk on all this. But I think Saylor is onto something very profound, which is that because Bitcoin is a scarce, legitimately scarce resource, that it's probably going to go nowhere but up. So Saylor makes a very provocative argument that Bitcoin could go up 10x over the next 10 years or something like that, which therefore if we start a Bitcoin strategic reserve, it could pay for the national debt and like basically cover our losses on the deficit. But I think that I think the United States government should be invested in crypto without a doubt.
I tend to agree with Michael Saylor that it's more likely to go to $1 million than zero.
Yes, I think that's right. And by the way, so you have a problem of the world's richest people. They don't know where to put their money. So there's only so many penthouses in London and Paris that they could buy. There's only so many ranches in Wyoming that they could buy. And so we had this problem. So you create all this money, the money goes upwards to wealth inequality point, to your earlier point, The question is then, well, what do rich people do with money? There's only so many equities they can buy. There's only so many shares in NVIDIA and Apple and Microsoft they could justify. Well, money needs to find a home, and it's found a home in Bitcoin. And so once it has mass adoption, and literally the wealthiest families on the planet are starting to park serious monies in Bitcoin. And because it's scarce, it's easy to transfer, and it's just a winner. Sometimes there's a mass adoption and it just rises to the surface, and I think Bitcoin is that.
Before you go, check out my previous videos. They'll give you even more insight into what's happening in the crypto space. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on Solana's price. Do you think it's going up, down, or sideways from here? Drop a comment below, smash that like button if you found this helpful, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update. Goodbye.